The first time they saw him, most people thought it was a joke. A scrawny human, barely out of his 20s, standing at the edge of the dragon enclave with nothing but a leather satchel slung across his back and a stubborn look on his face. No armor, no sword, no royal insignia, just dusty boots and windblown hair. Another fool come to make a name for himself, the merchants muttered. Probably wants dragon blood for a potion. The soldiers laughed. They called him names, whispered bets on how fast he'd run when the dragons showed their teeth. But Ryland didn't come for fame or fortune. He came because no one else would. The enclave had been closed for centuries. Dragons had retreated into the storm-racked mountains after the Dragon Wars, refusing all treaties, killing any intruders who crossed the borders. Generals, kings, even warlocks had tried to parley with them. None returned. So when this ordinary human appeared, walking straight into the lands of death, people gathered to watch from a safe distance. Dead man walking, someone chuckled. Yet Ryland didn't flinch as the first dragon descended. The dragon with eyes like storms. She was massive, scales glinting like obsidian armor, wings folding with a crash that shook the valley. Her eyes were molten silver, bright with old fury and older grief. The air itself seemed to cower. Ryland looked up at her towering form and bowed. Not too low, not like a coward, just enough to show respect without surrender. The dragon's voice rolled like thunder. Another human thief come for treasure? No, Ryland said simply. His voice didn't tremble. Then for glory? To slay a dragon and wear its skull as a crown. No. The dragon studied him, nostrils steaming. Then why come? Ryland met her gaze. Because someone should listen to you before the next war begins. The crowd miles away couldn't hear the words, but they saw the dragon pause. For the first time in centuries, one of the great beasts didn't strike. The boy who didn't run. Ryland returned the next day. And the next. People mocked him in the taverns. The dragons must be toying with him, they sneered. Maybe they're fattening him up. But he kept going back. He brought no weapons. Only food. Bread. Salt. Dried meat. Not as offerings, but as if sharing a meal with equals. He asked questions about their history, their wounds, their long memories of betrayal at human hands. Some dragons ignored him. Others roared to frighten him off. He stayed. And slowly one dragon began to talk. Then another. They spoke of the Dragon Wars, how humans had mined sacred mountains, poisoned rivers, hunted dragon hatchlings for alchemy. How peace treaties had been broken by kings drunk on gold. How dragonkind had retreated not from defeat, but from disgust. Ryland listened. Truly listened. You're the first, rumbled the silver-eyed matriarch one evening, to ask why we left instead of demanding we return. Maybe because I'm not a king, Ryland said with a faint smile. Kings like answers that make them look noble. For the first time in centuries, a dragon laughed. The gift of names. Weeks passed. Travelers whispered of strange sights, dragons and a lone human sitting by the same fire at dusk, voices rumbling like distant storms. When a rival kingdom's soldiers tried to cross the mountains, the dragons burned their siege towers before they reached the pass. Not one soldier survived. But Ryland? He walked through the flames untouched. The dragons called him Skyspeaker, listener between worlds. Finally, the silver-eyed matriarch spoke the words that would shake empires. "Brother," she rumbled, her voice carrying across the valley, "you have listened when others only demanded. You have shared bread instead of blood. From this day, you are kin to dragonkind." The other dragons bowed their massive heads. High on the cliffs, hidden soldiers and spies watched in stunned silence. A human brother to dragons? Laughter turns to silence. When Rylan returned to the nearest human city, the same men who had mocked him now stared, as if seeing a ghost. "Is it true?" the governor demanded. "The dragons spared you?" "They didn't just spare me," Rylan said. "They've sworn no human army will cross their borders again. On one condition." "What condition?" "That we leave their mountains untouched. No mines, no hunting, no wars." The governor scoffed. "You expect us to obey beasts?" Rylan's eyes hardened. "They are not beasts. They are older than our empires, wiser than our kings. And if you break faith again, they will not stop at your soldiers." People laughed behind the governor's back, of course. Called Rylan a mad prophet, a dragon pet, until the day the rival kingdom sent its legions into dragon territory, until the sky itself darkened with wings, until fire rained from the clouds and the mountains moved like living things. The legions were ash before sundown. No one laughed after that. Brother to dragons. Months passed. Peace, true peace, spread across the borderlands for the first time in centuries. Rylan visited the dragons often, learning their stories, their ancient songs. He taught them human history in return, the parts not stained by greed. The dragons began to rebuild their cliffside cities, crafting spires of obsidian and crystal that glowed at night like constellations brought to earth. Sometimes, children from nearby villages crept close to watch the shining silhouettes. Once, a little girl stumbled near a dragon hatchling. The massive matriarch moved to strike, until Rylan stepped between them. "She's just curious," he said softly. The dragon studied the trembling child, then snorted a plume of smoke. The hatchling bounded forward, sniffed the girl's hair, and sneezed sparks all over her dress. The girl giggled. For the first time since the Dragon Wars, a human child laughed in a dragon's shadow without fear. The Council of Kings. Inevitably, the kings summoned Rylan. He stood before gold-draped thrones while fat men with jeweled crowns demanded to know the dragon's weaknesses, their numbers, their secret hordes. "They are not your enemies," Rylan said coldly, "unless you make them so. They are monsters," one king snapped. "And you've gone native among them." Rylan's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. "They call me brother. What do your people call you? Tyrant? Usurper? Oathbreaker? Perhaps look in a mirror before naming monsters." The kings bristled, but none dared move against him. Not when entire armies had vanished beneath dragon fire. The last laugh. Years later, when the silver-eyed matriarch finally died, her wings folding one last time atop the highest peak, the dragons gathered in mourning. So, did humans. Rylan stood beside the great pyre, older now, hair touched with gray. The young dragons bowed their heads to him as they would to one of their own elders. And in the cities beyond the mountains, people remembered how they once laughed at the ragged boy with no sword, no crown, no army. They didn't laugh anymore, because the dragons still called him brother. And when the dragons speak, even kings listen. Epilogue. Decades later, ballads would be sung of the man who ended centuries of bloodshed without lifting a single blade. Children would play at being dragons and the brother of dragons, chasing each other through fields where soldiers once marched to die. And though empires rose and fell, no army ever again crossed into dragon lands uninvited. Because somewhere in their endless memory, the dragons remembered the human who listened